Hi, Lehi. I'm guessing that by now you've heard everything that you need to hear about rules and restrictions and things that have been put in place to control the spread of corona. So for this little video, I thought maybe that instead I would share some stories about how Lehi fared during the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918. So I took to the old newspaper clippings, as I sometimes do, and at first there were some really bleak things. It was a lot like the news today. It was a little bit depressing. There were statistics about how many people had been infected and how many people had passed away. And then some of the things I was reading started to sound pretty familiar. For instance, a Tribune article from November of 1918 said, and I quote, "Further instructions issued yesterday by the State Board of Health advises that people should remain at home as much as possible. Patients should be tended by as few persons as possible, preferably by one, who should wear a gauze mask provided by the State Board of Health." And listen to this part. "Dr. Beatty advocated the arrest of every person who failed to cover his mouth when sneezing in public." So I thought it was interesting that the restrictions they had then were, in some ways the way we are now, although we are not arresting people who sneeze in public. There was also some inspiration peeking through. I've been seeing lots of stories of people who are making homemade masks to either share with their neighbors or send to other places that don't have enough. And there was a story from November 21st, 1918, and it says, quote, "The Lehi branch of the Red Cross has been busy during the influenza epidemic, even if all forms of gatherings have been prohibited. During this week, the chapter has sent 6 cases of knit goods to Denver, including 145 sweaters and 70 pairs of socks." So that really reminded me of the things that people are doing here to try and contribute to relief efforts and help in other places and with your neighbors. But I also wanted to find out what had eventually happened to some of the people that lived through that time. And I found a newspaper article that talked about one family who had been infected. And it said, "Mrs. George Udell and her 2 children, now residing near Lehi, are reported to be suffering from influenza. The children are Dean, aged 14, and Georgita, aged 6. We have a lot of kids in Lehi. I have a little stepdaughter of my own who's age 6, and I fully expected to discover the worst about what had happened to this poor little family. So I looked further, and to my surprise, they all survived. All 3 members of that family survived the influenza epidemic. The mother, Maud, survived and lived to the ripe old age of 84. The son, Dean, served a mission in Oklahoma just 4 years after the epidemic, and he was ordained to 70 at the age of 23 by B.H. Roberts. He married, he had 6 children. His sister, Georgita, who had been so young, just 6 years old, the little 6-year-old in the story grew up and she became a nurse. She worked at the Lehi Hospital. She had 6 children of her own. She served a mission in Hawaii, and she died and was buried here in Lehi in 2002. So the point of all these stories is we've been through this before. There's life after the flu. There's life after corona. Lehi is strong, and we will continue to get stronger as we go through this together. The other day I was doing some driving around because I have a special needs son who doesn't like to be cooped up, and I was tired and frustrated, and I wasn't sure how much longer we could take, staying away from other people. And as we were driving on Main Street out west of the roundabout, I saw that someone had put up a sign, and it said, "We're stronger together, 6 feet apart." And I thought how true that was. And I don't know who put it up, but it was just the message that I needed that day and just the inspiration, because it's so true. Lehi has been through this. We've been through worse than this. We will come out of it stronger. And I think the more we pull together, the more we care about each other, the more we respect each other's feelings, the better we will come out of it, and the sooner. I hope everyone takes care of each other. Stay safe, Lehi. Thanks for all you're doing.